It's Chris, crowdfunding roundup. But truth be told, most important part of the video right here at the beginning. You may have saw it, you may not have, right? Because I posted it on the community page. Mea culpa, eating humble pie. I screwed up earlier this week the rules of Wild Gardens and affected gameplay, which affected content in terms of judgment. So you know what? I screwed up. I took the video down. It will be coming back. Mea culpa, apologizing to Rogue's Gauntlet. They've been super gracious, and I'm going to redo that and come back with it later. You know, sometimes the hardest thing to say is, I screwed up. And I'm going to fall on my sword. No one else to blame but me. The buck stops here. The standard, the bar for me to be talking about something has to be set higher. So I apologize for letting you down in that way. Again, Rose Gauntlet, been super great about that. And one or two of you in the comment sections who were like, yeah, see, he does that all the time. You remember that review 2 years ago with Hamlet? He screwed that one up too. Yes. Yes. Some people just don't forget things. And you know what? It's why, sometimes I read the comments. Sometimes I just read them and move on. Anyway, let's go. Crowdfunding. What's going on this week? What do you need to know? Where are things at? Let's do it. I mean, seriously though, it is really, really freaking humbling when that happens. Right? Whew. Okay. So Everdell Duo. Last Saturday, I actually had a part of the news segment video that turned out to be the ARCs one and the engagement side of things. That was a whole part of a news video, but I cut that off. And so I was talking about this trend, which I'll put out in the news video this week, that dueling games are the thing. Res Arcana Duel just got announced. Living Forest Duel just got announced. Reskin of Seven Wonders. You had Caverna. You've had Splendor. King of Tokyo. Question though with it is that will these be sustainable? Will they actually continue to have, speaking of the higher standard, a higher standard, arguably some of these better as two-player games than their original counterparts? And Everdell is going to be testing that here. Duo. It's giving you a couple different things. And that's the main part that worries me here. Because it's doing a little link campaign, it's doing competitive, and it's doing cooperative. As I say, with all of these games that do all of these things, is one going to be just that much dramatically better or different? It's not going to get away, similar to a Splendor style of things, too far in the sense of the Everdell original, but it's going to give you something different with this tab below that's going to be available to you as a resource management. Move your worker around, take the action that's there, gather your resources, play cards from the meadow or your hand, but also only touching 2 potential symbols or sun and moon that are present down on the board in the first place, limiting what you'll have access to on a turn-by-turn basis. Competitively in that way, but then cooperatively in the sense that you're building a city together, but you can't have communication. So it's a little bit more like the game, if you will, of what you can tell and how you can tell people in terms of what you have, what you can contribute, and what's going to be available on your turn. Campaign is also going to be thrown in there in addition. The biggest thing I saw in the comment section more so was, it's $19, which is actually pretty freaking good for North America. But I had several European folks comment to me that, by the time it's that plus the tax plus shipping, it's $41-ish. And it's going to be $35 local at retail price. So $19 if you get it here. But if you're looking at an overseas sort of non-North America situation, you might be paying more, including all of those other things. So you're paying for the support the publisher, but really the get it early factor in is the get it early or get it not early factor worth $5, $6, $7, $8 for you campaign by campaign. That's what you have to ask yourself, right? The other part of this campaign is that they're offering tarot-sized cards of larger print of all of the other stuff that was mini previously. All of that stuff down there below. You can get the additional stuff in addition, all of everything that you're interested in from that aspect of things, right? There you go. And that's it. That's the whole campaign. Again, sort of like the next one we're talking about, I'd be interested to see how much of this is actual, duo, because again, $19 price point, $245,000, that's 3,200 backers. So that's not inconsiderable, but you have 4,600 backers there. So proportionally, about 2/3, a little over 2/3 of the backers doing that. Now, subsequently, we're going to go over and talk about Barrage with the legendary box. I'm not going to give you the mechanical breakdown of this one. This one's too heavy for me to actually talk to you about in a short span, as well as actually understand what I'm telling you rather than just reciting gibberish that sounds like gibberish coming out of my mouth. But it's giving you 2 new factions that you're going to be having with 2 new companies, all new content in that way. And wait for it, legendary box. So surprisingly, and this was the comparison I'm going to go off of right to beginning, right, is that you have the legendary box being actually not down there, but this one with the expansions being bought by 1,400 of the 2,000. So 70%. So a little bit higher proportion there. And not as much as I was expecting with, you know, only about 250 people right now doing just the add-ons. Now you notice obviously all the other levels have add-ons too. So again, not as big as maybe some of their other campaigns. And I was interested, right? Because I'm not as familiar with Cranio Creations products in general, especially Barrage and a few of their other heavier gameplays, that, you know, when you look at these price points and you go, okay, you know, skipping past the one or two, you know, videos of preview style of things and breaking down this little insert here that they have for all of the prices, I said, okay, the Lee Water Project expansion, 28 euros. So I was like, okay, you know, what does Board Game Oracle have? Board Game Oracle actually has both of these expansions, as you can see here. No, there's actually prices, but they're both out of stock everywhere. So that's more of the issue, but price-wise, they're actually very, very similar. But if they're not in stock, you know, then your mileage is going to vary. And you can get all of the other little stuff that isn't necessarily all available too for all you completionist collectors that are actually getting the legendary box in the first place. So that's what you have to kind of wonder, think about, and know. Is it a good deal? Well, I mean, there was a Reddit post just earlier today before I filmed this, asking, you know, basically FOMOing from a Deluxified side of things. And I'd say that Deluxified falls under the same category as completionist. Those promos, you're never going to use them. Those two extra companies, unless this game is your most played game of the year, you're never going to use them to the extent that you need it, right? It's just like Multiverse. It's just like Prime with all the expansions. It's just like any of these crowdfunding campaigns that offer you 3 expansions, right? It's not going to be your money's worth, right? For the vast majority, unless you are very, very selective and you have a smaller collection than I do. That's a low bar there. I should have rephrased that. But you know what I'm saying at the same time. So is it ever worth it? No, probably not. Are you going to do it anyway? Well, yeah, you know, a fair number of these 2,000 people are doing it. And you know what? That's okay too. Because the real question on that thread was, is it ever worth it? And the answer was, from me, the majority of the time, no. But you'll also notice that I did not say it's never worth it. Those two things are completely different. So if you're a heavy gamer and you want one of the best 50 games of Euro style, ranking wise all time, well, give it a look-see. Otherwise, go watch someone else's video so you can actually tell what's going on here, because it's too heavy for me. And before I stick my foot in my mouth, next game. Speaking of that, a Nice Cuppa. Scott Alm solo game. You're laying out cards in 2 sort of line tableaus. One is going to be in a random order. The other one, you're going to randomly flip up one of these worries, and then it's going to affect the order of the T's in the first place. Then using the order changing that's going on, you'll have 2 sides of the T's that are available to you. If you have the right side of the T match up with a face-up worry, then that eliminates the worry. But then at the end of the game, you're not only eliminating the most worries that you can by matching them up in the appropriate T settings in that way, but also then having the T's in the correct sequential order as well. That's the game in a nutshell. It's a solo game. It seems more puzzly than I was expecting, but that's what a lot of these solo games are from, you know, these guys anyway. So take that for what you will. Usually what you're getting is, as you see on the sidebar, free expansion. So it's a good book expansion, 2 new T cards, 3 new worry cards, a little bit more setup to go along with it. And you get $12 for whatever it is for the price point. So again, good deal. Do you like it? If it's not for you, it's not going to change your mind. Other ones from this line are also available as well, as they typically do. So again, it's one of those third in a row that I'd be curious to see how much of that $46,000 is straight up Nice Cuppa and how much of that is split between some of the back catalog that people always seem to want to get from Button Shy Games in the first place. So again, not a criticism at all with any of these 3, right? It's just something, as someone who looks at all these crowdfunding campaigns on a weekly basis, it's just something that goes through my head and I go, I wonder. Because again, that's that whole conundrum of how much money gets put in during the actual campaign versus how much gets put in the pledge manager, and what campaigns have that and what don't. So I just like thinking about that as a mental exercise. Natera, the new beginning, the only one that I am super familiar with this week, because I put out a video where I didn't completely and utterly completely mess up the rules and make myself look like an idiot and stick my foot in my mouth as usual, like I usually do on this channel in the first place. So this is a worker placement with Anthropomorphic animals in a post-apocalyptic setting with a little bit of area control in terms of influence tracks. As you place your workers in this area, you have the ability to move up on the influence track. So each time you place it in there, you're going to move up one. There are going to be certain tiers of worker placement spots that are going to be available only if you have a certain amount of influence in one of these 4 areas. There's a 5th area in the center that doesn't actually accumulate influence and actually makes you discard cards instead of just gain resources. And so you're going to have to mitigate and use those wisely. As one of the other differences in this game, you're going to have leaders and minions workers, if you will. Leaders can be placed on any other spot, but they cannot have other workers placed in the same spot as them, because if they're just minions, you can have minions as long as they're not your own minions placed in the same spot. So everybody, all 4 players could potentially have a minion in the same worker placement spot on a single round. But a leader excludes anyone else being on there. So for example, the bear faction is all leaders. And so that's going to be how their slight 1 asymmetric power is going to play in, effect. Also, when they, for example, get placed in the center area that has no area control track, they get to move one of the other tracks up. So, for example, one of the other ones that I played as, the raccoons. The raccoons actually, I don't know why I'm saying it a little bit funny. The raccoons, it just sounds funny now coming out of my mouth. Sorry, squirrel. They get to access and can manipulate abilities that are in the market of the workers that you're going to be hiring without actually having to hire them. And their production is slightly different also in terms of what they have and the tech tree that goes along with that. And then the tiers of the, worker placement spots at 2 and 3, when you unlock them at 3 and 6 influence respectively in each of the 4 areas, are going to be different and can be subbed in and out. There are also end game, well, not really end game, but overall objective scoring positions as well. And then houses that you can place on these worker placement spots in addition to claim them as your own to get an additional separate bonus. So it's got layers on there. So I really think they did a good job with this. I don't think it needs a whole lot else. I wouldn't mind, again, as a prototype, I said maybe a couple different more worker placement spots in each tier, but as a non-designer gameplay element, balance issues situation, I have no clue if that's feasible or not. So again, just something that goes through my head. And it's a solid game, and it's one of the bigger surprises of the year for me as a whole. And if you want it, check it out. What is the price point? I skipped over all of that while I was talking too fast, and that's probably the biggest thing, right? It's pretty expensive for what it is. No stretch goals though, but $89 with a micro expansion and a premium deluxified upgrade. So again, if you're not a premium person like I was just talking about and you can pass it, then you might be better off waiting. But that's going to be the question with a situation like this from Horizon Games as their first one. How wide distribution is it going to get? Because we've seen several that have gone that way so far this year that maybe weren't expected to from last year's crowdfunding, but we've also seen several that aren't necessarily. So check it out if you want to. Quest Kids, Realms of the Kingdom. Again, I was going to talk about this game and Natera in my preview video from the news video that last weekend that got cut out. But again, this is probably one of the preeminent, nice 5, 6, 7-year-old age kids board games introductory, especially from a dungeon crawl side of things. The biggest problem I have with it, truth be told, is upkeep. Not upkeep in terms of the gameplay, but upkeep in terms of pickup and setup and teardown. But if that is one of your issues that you just don't mind, then it's really, agreeing with Tom Vassell that this is just an absolutely fun game for kids to enjoy and experience in that way, with having enough elements. The expansion that was out that I have, it adds just it's borderline too much, just keeping track of a little bit more stuff than I'd like. But again, it's one of those games where if the expansion adds just a little bit more in a different way and not too much, you can really get more mileage out of it as well, especially as those kids grow a little bit older. So it's a premium product though from Treasurefall Games. It is. It's a small company, and it's a little bit more of a pricier price point. And so that's the question you have to ask yourself comparatively on the kids or family style game market, where you can get a lot of these super decent kid games for $5 or $10. Are you willing to shell out, potentially $50 to $70 here for a slightly better experience? How much is a slightly better experience of something that you may be more interested in worth monetarily? So I believe I have Big Bads. I'm not sure I have the other one. I only have one of these expansions, so I wouldn't be opposed to it. Again, I'm not sure my kids are fully in it. They like it, my 8-year-old especially, because he liked it really a ton when he was 6, 2, and 5. But I'd make the argument that my kids are almost growing out of it at the 8 and 10 range. And so that would be my only concern. Not because they won't want to play it, but because I think they can handle a lot more things that will also stimulate them in a good way, growth-wise, gameplay-wise as well. I mean, the game is otherwise really relatively straightforward, right? You have this dungeon map set up, you place all the cards face down, and you just walk on to the next space. And the majority of them give you resources. Some of them are monsters. You fight monsters by just cashing in your resources, and then they give you stars and victory points. And there's little quest cards of having a certain number of cards, or certain number of enemies beat, or things like that. And there's little bonuses, because this is one of those games where if you don't have enough resource cards to beat the enemies, all of your competitors can give you a card. And if they give you a card, then you get a friend card, and that friend card gives you some random bonus that's written on it, and sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse. And you know what, it's a kid's game. Don't take yourself too seriously or you won't get out alive. But that's what you get. So it's the kind kid card for being kind. It's teaching kids good manners within a gameplay element, and there's really no other game that I have seen do this to encourage people to give their opponents good things. And that is probably the biggest thing I can say about this. The biggest compliment I can give it is that it is amazing from a teaching aspect from that side of things. So if you're looking at it, that'd be the thing I'd be looking at as a whole. It tells you right there how to play, all the add-ons that I talked about, all the additions. They did the giant one last year. They're going to have a few stretch goals, as a few kind kid cards, social goals, Kickstarter goals, social goals, all of those sorts of things. So plenty of good content out there from smarter people than I am, and what you may want and what you may not want. You know what? I don't think it is the Big Bads one. I think I have one of the other expansions, whatever that one is. I think it's maybe Trials of Tolk the Wise. Yeah, I think that's what we have. I don't know. I'm blanking off my hand. But kids, parents love it. I mean, this isn't just a moniker. This isn't just a phrasing. It's true. I stand by that as a first-person, non-fake Amazon reviewer. So give it a look-see. I mean, again, $21,000 you may scoff at. You may say that's not getting a lot of money. This is a kid's game. This is a kid's game on crowdfunding. That's really freaking good. So there you go. Then HAVOC Gen 0, $45,000. Again, this is like sort of the similar level on all these games right now. And this is a tactical card game. TCG. Ooh, look at that little wordplay. But it is kind of a TCG, because they've kind of got the TCG model here where you pay for more content. I'm not really sure how to make this fit in my head, because it sort of gives me Summoner War vibes with a little bit of like Yu-Gi-Oh going on as well. And I don't mean that as an insult. I don't mean that as a slight. I don't mean that as some shade, but just the vibe it gives me based off of the information on the page, right? You have your pilot, you have your mech, you have your building of potentially a pre-con deck, but mostly you're going to be customizing it for at least a 40 card deck in the first place. These mechanics in the field of play, similar to Summoner Wars, in a 6x6 grid that you're going to be moving across, attacking, dealing damage to, taking out, artifact exploring, resource gathering potentially in the middle to gain experience, and to just, attack your opponent as you want to be the last one standing. So random events occurring as well. It's just a question of, okay, is this tactical gameplay, similar to what several of the others we've seen this year and the years past, going to be slightly different enough in terms of what some of the asymmetries are bringing, the tactics, and the actual dynamics? And the honest answer is, I don't have a freaking clue. It looks interesting. The aesthetic is pleasing. And I just worry about the gameplay as someone who doesn't deck construct as well. That would probably be my biggest thing. The price point, though, like we were just talking about with Natera, it's scaled up, right? $60 for the starter set, and then it jumps up to $80. And so the main difference there is you're getting 3 pilots versus 4 pilots, and the 194 cards versus 122 cards. So again, somewhat appropriate in terms of proportionately increased price wise, but then $125 essentially to get all of the stuff, which only includes 5 pilots, but nearly double the amount of cards going to be available to you in the first place. And that's significant, including these 10 legendary cards. And you're getting, again, money's worth is fine, right? A 2 versus 2 board extension you're never going to use, an extra special rule book, a bunch of chits and dice that you don't really necessarily need. So you're going to be paying for it in both ways. The pre-con decks here, but again, allow you duplicates, allow you things, so you can have it, but you're going to be having to pay extra in a TCG model to optimize. So I do not like that. I do not like that. I'm not a fan of that as a whole. Discover some stretch goals here. Again, they've hit a couple. They're going to get a couple more by the end of this in terms of more cards. This project may not be for you, but the other thing I have to point out here is at the bottom, this use of AI, because I wanted to know what this said, right? So I clicked down and I said, okay, what is this actually saying? Not involve the development of AI technology. We use AI dependent tools like smart brushes, procedural texturing, diffusion models. So you know what? They're saying we don't draw with it, but we're going to modify our already drawn hand artistic drawn stuff in the first place with some tools, which is no different than any other place. But what I want to say though is I love the transparency with this. There's no hemming and hawing. There's no sort of maybe. There's no are we doing it, aren't we doing it. This is transparent and I love it. So I give them kudos, Nick Studio, for just putting it out there and saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing, explicitly. None of this sort of Puerto Rico, are we using it to touch up things, are we using it in some ways or not sort of situation, or retaliation, Dragon Eclipse, whatever it was previously, right? There's no speculation, it's just straight up. So game aside, either way, kudos there. Thought I'd mention it here as well. Pandora Celeste. They are funding over on Kickstarter, sort of like Endeavor Deep Sea did last year, where they did the original GameFound campaign, and then shortly after that, they said, okay, we want to fill a few other slots or get a couple stretch goals extra, so we're going to run a second campaign over on Kickstarter. So 22 people, $2,800. I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, it's fine. If people are willing to back it, or if you're not going to use a late pledge at all, I guess this is kind of cool. But it's sort of the nemesis game that everyone was comparing it to as just a different vibe as a whole. I'm not going to break it down. I already covered it and how it played previously on the previous campaign. Gun Tower Games is, getting more funds here. So if you're interested, here's a second chance at it. There you go. This is probably the biggest surprise of the weekend. This is Lords of Heaven from Flanix. Not that it's doing well, but $140,000 doing well. And that's pretty impressive as a card-driven, head-to-head, faction-based game set in medieval Jerusalem in the Middle East as one of the 4 factions as represented right here in the First Crusade battling against each other. Deluxified little pledge there as well in a card-driven aspect where you start out drafting cards until you get 3 in the round, and rinsing and repeating until you play all those cards in order to achieve what you need to. $112 is the all-in, so not inexpensive, but deluxified with coins and, extra tokens there in the first place. $55 though, as you can see, kind of interesting to see the split there. Usually on crowdfunding, we don't see, as I was talking about earlier, splits, this big a discrepancy. Most of the time it's the all-in people getting it, not just the straight up deluxified version, but they've also said above, Flanix is maybe not going to have this widely available at retail. So again, what does that look like? What does that actually mean? A few stretch goals, a mini expansion to go along with it. So what you're doing though is you're engaging a thematically and multifunctional use of cards in order to basically build your engine for military success, sieges, battles, and tactical goals across the way. As I mentioned, drawing your 5 cards, simultaneously pick one and pass until you get 3 in your hand, and then adding the buff action that's going to be available to you, resulting in 4 to start the game. Placing your cards above your action icons, stacking them to make sure you can pay for them, performing whatever action it is, including placing buildings that are going to be available to you, putting presence down and influence within those cities and those regions, as well as moving your cards or your, units between locations per resource that you're available to do so. Income is gathered, and rinsing and repeating. So more of an area control card driven tableau style, if you will. The question is, again, how heavy is this one going to run? Because that'd be my main concern in this sort of board situation that you've got there as a whole. Plenty of how to play when we skip down here. So a little bit of preview content as well. That'd be the big question mark is this game right for you? And I don't actually know if there is a rule book on here. Let's skip back up here. Third Crusade Spotlight, Tabletop Simulator. So no, this is going to be one that you're going to have to watch a little bit more of one of these videos, whatever language is your preference, if you like watching it in your own language, that is. Sometimes I don't. It's a little bit more shoot from the hip if you're trying to learn it from a different language-based video. Anyway, just kidding. Anyway. People take yourselves too seriously sometimes. I take myself too seriously sometimes as well. But that's it. So crowdfunding, Flanix, they even say it's a special type of pre-order down there. Again, I appreciate the transparency, but it's doing really well. So giving them kudos. Gonna have to put a little bit closer eye on it to kind of see where it goes from here. I guess I would wonder and question just whether or not it's going to be as good at 2 and 4, or if you're going to have sort of a situation where it's just going to be, better from those aspects, or too much king making, or too much take that at the higher player counts, where you're losing some of the strategy and more of the king making or tactically based situation as a whole. Then we're talking over here Pest with the new expansion Guilds of Thokaia, with the expansion 2nd edition 90 grand of 20,000 grand. By the way, 20,000 grand. That's how my night's going. I didn't pull it up on the page, but the one thing I should have been criticizing that I forgot to say during that part of the video was Barrage Legendary Box from Cranial Creations. Their funding goal is $11. Come on now. That's ridiculous. Don't do that. Don't be that person. Don't be that publisher. Do better. like I said at the beginning of the video, set the bar higher. Action selection, area control, basically trying to rebuild your city during the plague and the pestilence. And these guilds are going to give you ways of modularly changing what the base game was in the first place. I think there was a little bit of concern from the comments I read in terms of errata, but it's going to be a second edition now. And that was a whole video I was going to do another topic on, you know, in between at some point, is that, you know, second editions, right? You may pay slightly less, you may pay slightly more, you may get a slightly improved product. You know, you may be dealing with errata that the second time people didn't have to deal with if you were an early adopter and a funder in the first place. I mean, because again, it's not that it's bad, but you're still paying for a $15, you know, probably including shipping upgrade fixed pack. So that's more of the issue, right? It's one thing if we improve some of the other stuff, but it's another if it's, well, that much better and different in terms of what's there. So let's get down to the gameplay though, because that's what you're really interested in. And so you're going to have to watch a bit of video, but it basically runs you through the phases that you're going to be dealing with when you're revealing these pest cards on an event by event, round by round basis, and then an aid card sort of to influence or mitigate it in a different way. Spending influence to sway a council to get more bonus resources, and then using your action selection phase to manage your workers and your resource management on a grid by grid action, having an assistant as well that's going to give you a combination of said actions, including move, quarantine, curing, and assigning people, as well as producing, constructing, and researching. So again, the dynamics are going to be there, but it just worry with any of these Euro games as a non-Euro gamer, are they all going to be cohesive? That was the one thing that I was really impressed about from Natera, was that it was doing just the right amount. It wasn't doing too much, because sometimes I feel like when, you know, I get an idea in my head, I want to do X, Y, and Z in a video, like I talked about earlier, right? Like I wanted to do the ARCs portion of things and the engagement portion of things, plus all of the other regular news, plus all of the upcoming crowdfunding, plus all of the hotness. And I did, and I said, ooh, this is not a good video. This is, you know, 35 minutes when it could be 14. And then I went with it. So sometimes less is more. That'd be my only question with this, with the guilds, with the modularity. If you're buying multiple modules, are the multiple modules going to be all equal in your mind? Or are you going to play with one or two of these modules as you have more availability in terms of customizing the game to your own preferences? The guild hall representing favors and businesses, factions that you can get involved in the political side of things. Having a tier requirement, you must have reached a certain necessary tier with that certain envoy or faction in the first place to pay it. And then enduring that, you're going to get rewarded at the end of the game. The clusters module here as well is going to be giving you something as well different in that sense. 3 strains of the pest that are causing the infection, but you complete the nature of the disease and keeping, you know, collection or memory of which ones belong to what strain and when they activate, giving you a different way of mitigating or eradicating those clusters and using that research in a pandemic style way as a whole. New clusters appearing randomly on the map and activating in different ways that you can prevent and eradicate, but having to cooperate to do so. So does that interest you? Does that give you, you know, more confidence in this product? Do you want to buy modules to fix problems with the base game? Do you want to, you know, have a second edition when I have something in my collection like Machina Arcana, which needed a third edition to iron all of these out? Streamlining the game. I mean, that'd be the thing I'd be worrying about, is that if you're streamlining the mechanics, it's not just like tweaks of cards or errata, it's you're changing some of the flow of the game in the first place. You're changing on, you know, a whole new mechanic. You know, as well as changing a few of the board situations. So that's, you know, a lot of balancing. That's more than, you know, like a 1.5 or a 1.3. I would argue that this probably is a 2.0, and that this could be a drastically different game than 1.0. But if you got burned by 1.0, this still might also not change your feelings on 2.0. So that'd be the thing you need to worry about. Running you through the other guilds that are available here in the base game, so you can be aware of those, and a little bit of overview. Plenty of other videos out there in the first place, since it's already delivered to first time backers, so you can again go check out big amounts of content on Board Game Geek, or even this page as a whole, and maybe you'll get it sometime by the end of 2025 if that interests you. So the pledges are here again. We talked about you know, first edition who only want the replacement base and pieces, it's only 69 cents. But, you know, is this a $215 game for you as a replacement model 2.0 with some already issues? Again, not going to say it's bad, don't have any hand-on experience. Area control is not my forte, if you will. So I would just be concerned that with all the new items, it's still going to cost you over $100, and a deluxe bundle is going to cost you $150 to $200. So is it worth that amount of price for you? And I leave that up to you to decide. Pest with the new expansion. Then we're talking Sneferu. I'm probably mispronouncing it. I'm sure it's like Neferu. Builders of the Pyramids, right? This is sort of a tile laying, tile grabbing, price paying, play from behind style game. And what I mean by that, it's got a little more of a Glenmore or Glenmore 2-ish vibe. I'm not sure if actually the original Glenmore uses that, but Glenmore 2 does, because I only own number 2. But what you're essentially doing is you're pulling these tiles from the area that's going to be available to you in the little central board. And so when you're pulling them from these central board areas right here, this one, you are then placing them up into your pyramid, filling slots, getting resources, combo chaining your engine, if you will. But depending on where they're at, both column and row here, it's going to cost you a certain amount of food and a certain amount of time. The food is you're paying as a main resource. The time is where you're going to be moving along the track that you can kind of see if I scroll back up here along this river board. As I just mentioned, you can see the player areas right there. But then alongside being able to put it in your pyramid, you can also fill colored spots here for additional combo bonuses. You go until everybody reaches the end of the river. That's it. Rinse and repeat. Looks like there may be a little bit of asymmetric builder tiles that you may be able to utilize along the way if you want to. And the rulebook is on the page. Bonus tokens that you're going to be acquiring and stretch goals included. It's only going to cost you a little under $37. So you like that tile-driven engine combo build situation where paying in time and the person in the back goes next? Well, yeah, right. That's what you've got going on here. Again, like I said, choosing, paying, moving, placing. There you go. That's everything that's on the page. That's all you need to know. Rulebook is there, a couple video overviews, and that is it. Before I mispronounce their name again, let's just go on to the next one. Divide and Conquer. You know, it's got $4,000, folks. Divide and Conquer. Conquer being a nutshell or a nut that they talk about it being as the basis for the name. But what you're doing in this game essentially is a draft-based situation where you're basically creating 3 individual characters, going head-to-head, knocking them out, and doing this over multiple rounds to be the one who wins the most rounds head-to-head with the cards that are available to you. A deluxe edition with a few extra exclusive cards, additional dark staining of the dice set, and a battle map. You want to know actually how those combos and powers are going to be interacting though, and how you're going to be equipping your Conkers and going head to head in this game? Well, no, too bad. I don't think there's a rulebook on the page actually at the time of me filming this, but it gives you a little vibe there of the drafting of the cards, preparing them, creating your little 3 sets that you have. You must have a string attached to it, whatever again that means. And then going into battle head-to-head, choosing damage equal to health, destroyed, battles over. You do it over 2 rounds and 7 battles. So that's it. 20 pounds, 25 pounds, 40 pounds. Multiply and divide and conquer. You can pay 105 pounds if you want a couple copies. A few stretch goals as well there. That's everything. That is it. And that's why we're talking about it as well. Idols Clash. It's K-pop, the board game, right? The interesting thing about this, though, is they're using like real references to real K-pop bands and artists. So I wonder kind of about an IP thing issue, but I'm not sure if they've gotten permission or what. The problem is the page doesn't give you a good outline. There is no rule book. There is a how to play from Meeple University on here. So if you want any clue or if you any way like K-pop, you're going to have to look at it from that side of things. It's a take that set collection style of game where you have like basically 1 of 4 actions you're going to be taking. You have event cards and you have like idol cards. And at the beginning of the round, you have to do like them in order if you're going to do them. The first one is discarding an event card in order to get a rookie, draft a new character into your set. Then you can play these characters down. Then you can move them from set to set. And then you can have your event cards actually happen if you want to play them as the actual event cards. But you can have clashes going head to head. And again, set collections with just numbers in the upper hand corner that allow you to also play other action cards that will not only either boost your values, actions, or abilities, but then also be detrimental towards others. And if you win the clash, your main character gets a crown, which makes them more valuable. You turn these set collections in when you have at least, I think, 4 in a band, pop group, and then you get victory points based on that going around the outside of the diagram, and you go until someone gets all the way to the end. 48 euros though, it's expensive for what it is. So take that for what you will. Everything that I just said, it's all on the page here. Limited edition collector's art though, if you want. And that's pretty much everything you need to know. So how to play right there. See, I wasn't kidding. Watch the video and runs through the turn of the game, which again doesn't give you any more information, right? I just told you twice as much information that's anywhere on here as a whole. So give it a look, see if you're interested. I mean, I actually am a fan of K-pop. My kids like a little K-pop, so we got a little BTS going on sometimes in the house. So check it out if you're interested. Fight Night, movie debating card game. So it's a party game where you get a movie and then you choose like 3 elements of the movie and then you just debate back and forth twice. And then the judge chooses a winner. that's the game, I believe. Prompts are worth extra points. It's all up to the judge. You can play a championship mode, a slobber knocker mode, bar brawl mode, or a tag team mode. So you take sips because you can also make it a drinking game. I'm done. There you go. Fight night. So Sefirot. Again, I remember this the first time it came around. It's a tarot-based game, but it's really tarot. You're really just utilizing it for tarot. Because the problem with this campaign, just like the first time I saw it around here, is I don't actually know what the game is. 1 to 2 people, 30 to 60 minutes. The rules are this. I like how they call it deliberately accessible, as opposed to deliberately inaccessible, right? That describes half the games in my collection. Oh, that's a self-burn. Devised solitaire and other card game mechanics. Like what? Like what? Choose an intention. Choose a tree of life. Shuffle the deck and draw 3 cards. Draw a card. Play a card to one of the tree areas, and then kind of accumulate the areas that you need. So, yeah. Second edition, though, because it's going to be not only having a solo cooperative, but also competitive mode, a lighter, faster, and more balanced situation. I have no idea. It's all talking about tarot. It's got a few stretch goals. It does have a how to play, though. So if you really are super interested, I would probably say watch this, because it's going to be the most benefit if you really want to learn if this solo, solitaire, tarot-based game is for you as a whole. But I mean, again, it did really well the first time around. I think I had 6 digits funding the first time around, and it's probably going to get over that by the time it's funding too. So if you're liking tarot and you just want some pretty art and maybe a card game to go along with it, you know, we see that with people talking about miniature games and dungeon crawls all the time. They're like, well, you know, I'm going in for the minis and the art and the, you know, stylistic for that, and I'll use them for my D&D, and if there's a game in, I'm okay with that too. So this is no different, just in a slightly different vibe. There you go. Then last up here, we're talking about it because it wasn't actually on my radar. I talked about it when it launched, but I guess Isaac Childress put out an update tonight, the night me filming this, talking about it on the Frosthaven campaign. So I just decided to check it out as congratulations for surpassing Frosthaven, essentially is what it was. So it's the highest funding project on crowdfunding, period, or highest funding project on Kickstarter, $14 million. The Sanderson fans, Sanderson simps are super like into this too, right? This is just crazy. Like anything he puts out, people just gobble up like it's candy. I have no better analogy at this time of night. I am running low on fumes and fuel and everything else. So anyway, 14 million is a hell of a lot of money. So there you go. That's it. That's the roundup. That's everything new this week. Ooh, this weekend's video. I'm not sure if it's gonna be Saturday or Sunday, so I don't want to edit that part out because, you know, it's September. September, much bigger month than August. Much bigger month on crowdfunding than August. Probably bigger than July. Not sure if bigger than June, if that ranks it for you. Some big projects, some big names, some big, I'm interested. Tell me more. And a giant miniature tank. That's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. As I was told in the comment section, I should pump my Patreon more. Go support me on Patreon. That's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great freaking fantastic weekend. Hopefully you're not working on the Labor Day weekend. I almost said Memorial Day for a second there, and that's why I hesitated. And I also almost wanted to just say holiday, but I couldn't get it all out, and then hence the hesitation. And I'm done. Peace out. See you later. Ha!